Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with a first look at Thrones of Britannia, the new Total War game that released, well, today for me, yesterday for you guys. Anyway, if you're not familiar with this title, this is part of the new spin-off from the main franchise called Total War Saga, and these games are going to be much smaller in scope than the usual Total War games. Essentially what this spin-off is going to be used for is sort of a vehicle to look at interesting periods that would make for good Total War games, but don't necessarily cover a wide enough area to fit a full release, say like Rome 2 or Attila, where we're looking at all of like Western Europe, even a bit of Asia, Scandinavia, North Africa, and some of the Middle East. These games are going to be much more focused. So in the case of this one, all we're getting is the British Isles. But I think it's a nice addition to the franchise because these are periods in history that we probably wouldn't otherwise get to look at. Again, they just don't quite fit a full Total War release. But in something like this, where we're getting, a smaller game, almost like expansion in size, it works quite well. Anyways, this video is going to be sort of an informal review as well as maybe a first impressions video. I've already played the game a bit, but I do want to talk to you guys about it, and you can use this to decide whether or not you think this game is for you. And it'll also be sort of a tentative part 1 if you guys would like to see more gameplay later. So I'm completely open to doing a full Let's Play on this game if you guys would like to see it. We've got, of course, Total War Attila still happening on the channel. This game looks pretty interesting so far. I do love this time period. We've actually covered it several times in other games, so I'd be very interested to see how it plays out here. But I understand that my channel's not really focused entirely on Total War, so if you guys are just kind of interested about the game but don't want to see a full Let's Play, that's totally cool too. Just let me know in the comments. Anyways, let's jump into a campaign and I'll give you guys kind of the rundown on how this new game works, because there is some new mechanics and some have changed, and a few other things as well. By the way, before we do that, I absolutely love the artwork in this game. If you're paying attention to the background right now, you're getting a pretty good look at it. There's a lot of stuff like this in the game, and it looks absolutely fantastic. That said, I think the UI looks like absolute trash, especially compared to this fantastic artwork, and it makes it really, really obvious in a lot of cases when you have this super colorful, super interesting background stuff happening, and then you get this really bland, just like black, dark gray UI with nothing interesting happening at all. Anyways, let's keep moving. So I've, again, played a little bit, but we're going to jump into a new campaign here. And I'll give you guys a quick rundown on the factions. So we have essentially 5 cultures, and within each culture there is 2 choices for playable factions. There are a lot more factions than that in the game, and I know there's the common complaint of, why aren't they all playable? And to an extent, I agree with that. Keep in mind, however, that the reason that only these 10 are playable is because these 10 have unique faction features, unique characters. They have, I wouldn't say a storyline, but they have objectives that sort of lead you through a historical playthrough of that faction. And they just don't have the time and resources to make every faction like that. Also, they appear to have taken some creative liberties with some of these factions. Not to say that they didn't exist, they just didn't really exist in the capacity that they're represented here. They weren't necessarily maybe formal groupings where they've kind of, divided them into proper formal factions in the game. But anyways, I think a good compromise that I wish they would use is, keep doing what they're doing with like 10 select factions that get all this cool stuff. Make that your main 10 factions or however many. But even if they just allowed us to play as the other factions in sort of a very, default sense where they're not nearly as fleshed out, but, you can still play as them, sort of like when the inevitable faction unlocker mods come out. The factions aren't fleshed out, they don't have the objectives and stuff, but you can still play as them, and you still get some unique experiences. If they would just do something like that from the get-go, I think it would be a lot less insulting when they come out with the inevitable, faction DLCs that that we're getting. I don't know that for a fact literally, but it's happened in like every Total War game for how long now? So yeah, it's probably going to happen here. Anyways, if they were selling additional content for already unlocked factions, I feel like I wouldn't be as upset about it as if I was being sold a faction that's already in the game. They've just, you know, unlocked it and added a few things to it. Because, you know, in that way I feel like I'm getting stuff that was already there, I'm just having to pay for it. Whereas if these factions were already in the game and playable, and they were just selling me a more fleshed out version of it if I was interested in that particular faction, I don't think I would be as upset. But that's just my opinion. You're welcome to chime in the comments below. I'd like to hear what you guys have to think. But I feel like that would be a better solution, because then if you're not really interested in that faction, you don't need to pay attention to it, but it is there. I mean, they're in the game, clearly. We're playing against them. So just to have it just to pay to have it unlocked feels like me paying for content that's already in the game, because it kind of is. Anyways, English kingdoms. So here we're looking at the Saxon kingdoms. Although technically they'd be Anglian as well. They are Anglo-Saxon. Anyway, we have... I'm just going to call this what everybody else calls it, Wessex. This is like West Sax in the game. But, you know, Wessex, as it's called often in other media. And they're led by Alfred the Great. If you watch The Last Kingdom, you probably know this guy pretty well. Although he's a lot manlier in this game, at least how he's represented. He's a much like bigger, tougher guy. Historically, the Last Kingdom actually does a fairly decent job representing him, because he was a bit sickly and often ill. And so I think the actor in that show portrays him quite well. Here he sort of evokes like a Richard the Lionheart type character, but you know, creative liberties and all that. Anyways, English kingdoms, we also have I think they call it like Myers or something in the game, but this is Mercia for everybody else. And I never know where to go with these names. These old English names are kind of rough sometimes. Generally when you see a CE like that, it's a ch sound, like a CH in modern English. But that doesn't appear to always be the case, so I don't know if this is like Kjolwolf. It might be, or it could be Kjolwolf, something to that effect. But there's no... In Old English, the C's don't really do an S sound like they do in modern English. It's usually a ch or a k. So like a hard C or the CH. But I don't know which is the case here. I know in a lot of cases a CE indicates a ch, but I'm not an expert on Old English. I just do a lot of, you know, history stuff. So, the main deal with the English kingdoms is they get fyrds, which are effectively levies. They get a bigger commander aura and better melee skill when defending, and that's sort of to represent their situation in this time period where they're sort of, you know, fighting off Viking invasion. Then we move on to the Welsh kingdoms, which are probably more accurately described as the Brythonic. I always want to add an I in that word for some reason. Not at the end, but like Brythonic. But I don't know why. Anyways, they're sort of the Britannic or the Briton Celts. The Gwyneds, I don't know why I added an S to that, but Gwynedd is proper Welsh. They're actually in Wales. And if you wanted to maybe do like a King Arthur playthrough, this would be as close as you can get. Granted, this is far, far later. Far, far later than that. But these are among the last true Britons in Britannia at this point. Everybody else is, for the most part, Saxon or, you know, Anglo-Saxon. And then there's obviously quite a bit of Norwegians present as well. But yeah, we have these guys. And then we have Stratclete. I know that is a U, but in Old Welsh, that U makes sort of an I sound. At least that's the way I understood it. I don't speak Old Welsh. I just, you know, try to do my homework. So that's what I'm going to call it. But if you do speak Old Welsh, feel free to correct me on that. And so the Welsh kingdoms are all about heroism. Wales is the land of heroes, and they earn heroism by winning battles, owning Welsh settlements. One thing I don't really agree with in the game design here is that the settlements cannot change their cultures. I feel like that is not really in line with history or a very good gameplay mechanic, because realistically you could raise the settlement to the ground And then it would probably have no culture, and whoever you settled on that spot would then be the dominant culture, wouldn't it? But that's not a thing in the game, so can't be helped. So what you're going to want to do with these factions is, slowly collect, whether it be through subjugation, conquering, annexing, however you do it, you want to collect Welsh settlements. And then we'll move on to the Gaelic kingdoms. So this one seems like kind of a catch-all, because Kirkin here is actually a Pictish faction. And then we have also the Irish, which would not be... I guess they're sort of closely related to Pictish. I mean, at least the Pictish are, proper Britons, whereas everybody else is more or less Germanic. Anyways, with either of those factions, this is pronounced Meath, by the way. There's a TH sound in there. I know it doesn't look like it, but this is Old Irish. So it's Meath, like if it were M-E-A-T-H. And this is the only Irish faction that's playable in the game. I was a bit disappointed with that. However, one thing that you can do, and this is true of all the factions, I believe to an extent, is that there are kingdoms that you can establish. Now, I don't know how that works exactly. I haven't played far enough into the game. But I know that there's a Kingdom of Ireland that you can eventually establish. I don't know if you need to be playing as this faction to do it. You might be able to do it with any faction so long as you conquer the right provinces. And the same is true for the kingdoms of England and Scotland, I believe. I know about the Ireland one for sure. I don't know how they've subdivided Britain. But I know that there's kingdoms that you can establish. I'm not super clear on the details yet because I haven't tried myself. Anyways, moving on, we have the Great Viking Army, or the Great Heathen Army, as you may have heard it referred to. Now, these guys are represented sort of at the end, or at the very beginning, excuse me, of The Last Kingdom, the TV show. And I think they're currently being represented in the show Vikings. Is like actively covering this period, although that show is not very historically accurate. They try to they're very heavily dramatizing the history and also mushing a lot of history into a very small period of time, but they do hit on some of the bigger points, and that is one of them. So anyways, the first faction we have falling under these guys, who are Danish, by the way, as opposed to the Viking Sea Kings, which would be Norwegian. So we have East Angle, or East Anglia, which is actually Anglo-Saxon, but it's currently being ruled by the Danelaw, which have been subdivided in this game. It's very complex, and they've made it more complex by not adhering perfectly to history. But anyways, they're led by Guthrum, who is a Dane that is, I believe, converted to Christianity by the time that this game starts. And then we have the... Our foes shall fall. I don't know how they're expecting that to be pronounced. I mean, we would probably just refer to it as Northumbria in common conversation. But this is like Northumber? I don't know, again, what language they're expecting that to be. Because it could be Old English, it could be like Old, Danish. It could be, I don't know what language that's supposed to be spelled in, but we're going to call it Northumbria. And they're led by Guthrid. These guys are also Danes, and still part of the Danelaw, although, again, the Danelaw is chopped up for the purposes of this game. And so the Great Viking armies get additional income from raiding and sacking. They also gain additional morale when they're fighting against Anglo-Saxons, which would be the English kingdoms. Effectively, everything in the south, well, no, because that would be Danish as well, but like this kind of triangle here would be mostly Anglo-Saxon, and I believe there's some Anglo-Saxons hole up here as well. And then moving on, finally, to the Viking Sea Kings. These are probably more closely related to the actual Viking experience, if that's what you're going for. They're not trying to settle Britain so much as they're just still actively raiding it, although they do have some settlements somewhere. So we have Dyflin. These guys are actively holding what would become Dublin. They're led by Barter. And then we have Sudriar, which is going to be the northwest of Scotland, and they're led by Eric. Now these guys gain expedition, or the ability to conquer new lands. I don't know how exactly that factors in. Other kingdoms can pay them tribute. They can actively demand tribute, so they don't need to necessarily conquer things to gain income from it. And then they're immune to seasickness and high seas attrition. So it's kind of interesting because the Great Viking armies are not, which means that they're not going to be nearly as effective at seaborne raiding. Although they are still effective at raiding settlements with land armies. They gain additional income, but they do take normal sea attrition just like the Saxons would. Now, seasickness factors in that transport ships, the people on them will get seasick, and this is to sort of dissuade you from using them as naval forces. Their job is just to get armies from A to B and then deploy them. So if you were to, use transports of Anglo-Saxons to attack something at sea, you'd be at a disadvantage because your guys would get seasick. These guys, however, do not suffer that penalty, and therefore they can deploy transports almost like a navy. Anyways, you guys know I love Ireland, so let's play as Meath. I quite like this faction. It's supposed to be a fairly average start as well, so this should be a good introduction to the game. I'm still very new at it, so we'll play on hard difficulty. I generally play on very hard when I play Total War games, but some of the mechanics have changed and I'm still learning them. I'll do my best to explain them to you, but that doesn't mean I'm, completely familiarized with their overall workings in the game and how I should be deploying them. Right, so let's go.
Your father, as our king, dreamed of a united Ireland, but his vision was never realized. Now your brethren in the north hold the high kingship, and you must wait your turn. But the arrival of the Viking foreigners brings opportunity. Their strength could be yoked to your cause. With them by your side, you can fulfill your father's dream whilst claiming the high kingship for your line. One throne will rule Ireland. It is your destiny to be king.
You must meet many challenges if you are to claim the title of High King. Whether the Vikings fight by your side or stand against you, you must make all others kneel. Through strength and wisdom, you can unite Ireland under your rule. One of your armies is garrisoned in the capital, ready to defend it if necessary. Your other army only awaits the order to attack the rebel army in the northeast. Secure your borders by wiping out the rebels, and then prepare for war.
Okay, so let's dive on in here. Let's get that out of the way. Hopefully we don't get too many of those. I'm pretty familiar with what I'm doing. I have played like every Total War game ever, so I know the basics. Anyways, we should stabilize internally before we look beyond our borders. Prove your right to rule and eliminate the nearby rebels. If we complete this objective, we will gain internal stability, which gives us +5 public order and +50 unit replenishment to all armies for 5 turns. And we should be able to do that without too much trouble. I'm also glad that this will give us a very early opportunity for a battle in this video. Before we do that, however, there is a lot of changes made to sort of the overall campaign map. First of all, you may notice that the map only encompasses the British Isles, and it's a very, very intimate look at them. Ireland is about the size of Western Europe in Total War Attila. So this is, again, very, very detailed. Although, and I know this is true to, real life, but the terrain just isn't very varied on these maps, unfortunately. And when you get into Northern Ireland a little bit, and mostly into Scotland, that's where you actually see some terrain variance. You get a lot of like cool mountainous areas, and I imagine fighting wars in these mountains would be a lot of fun with all the choke points and stuff happening. But when you get down to like, central England here, you just get a lot of flat land, maybe a little bit of marshland with the occasional, forest. But otherwise, it's pretty uniform, and a lot of Ireland's that way as well. But again, that's sort of, you know, accurate to real life. Anyways, if we look at the settlements here, they've sort of done away with the previous system. Essentially, everything is centered around the main settlement now. And in this case, it's... oh god, these names. I should have picked a different faction because all of these settlement names are going to be completely butchered. Anyway, we have the main settlement here that we can upgrade, and then the minor settlements are all just kind of divvied up under this tab. Now, they are still independent of one another, so why is the camera rotating? I'm not trying to rotate it. That's going to be really annoying. I need to remove that. There we go. Alright. I was pressing like 2 keys at the same time and it made it rotate. Anyways, not trying to get distracted here. So, if we select this minor settlement, for example, we can see that it's sort of subdivided with these two here, and then if we click on that one, it's these two, and this one is that one. So they are still separate under this, and when you click on one, it will tell you which one is being selected, but otherwise, they're just sort of all lumped into the same thing. Oops, sorry. So yeah, they're all just kind of lumped under minor settlements, and we can upgrade them from here, but if we want to take a specific look at them, we can actually click on it and see, like, okay, that's Ardok. Got it. The other big change, and this is probably more substantial, this is kind of just a different way to organize things, although it's still more or less reminiscent of the old system, is the way recruitment works. So let's click our army here. This is actually led by the king himself. Now, when you recruit armies, or when you recruit... you know what, let's not do this one, because we have to be in a settlement to do it, and I don't want to waste my movement. So, we need to be in a settlement to recruit from. That's the first thing. You can't just be in the province, you need to be in the actual settlement. At least for the Irish faction. I haven't played many of the others. When you recruit units, you have limits, first of all. So you only have so many men available to recruit from at any given time. It's not just like, oh, you can recruit 4 of anything because that's what your barracks can handle per turn. No, there's only enough spearmen in this province right now to support 3 recruits. I don't know what the secondary number is, because if I were to click on, you know, all 3 of these guys, we would only be able to get 3. So I think that means that there's a potential for there to be as many as 5, but right now there's only 3. I think that's what it's saying. Anyways, when we hire one of these, they come in at about like a quarter strength. But we do get them instantly, and that's the biggest difference from the old system, is rather than waiting, say, 1 turn or maybe 2 for elite units, and then having that unit at full strength, we get them right away, but they have to replenish up to full strength over time. And I don't know which system I like better. You could make arguments about, like, you know, real-world accuracy with either one. In this case, we're sort of immediately getting 36 men, and then slowly it gets brought up to full strength. In the other system, you could say that you're, you know, requisitioning a unit, and then over the season that you wait until the next turn, that unit is brought up to full strength and fully recruited before deployed. So I don't really have a problem with either one. Now, I imagine they went with this system because of the different time scale in this. However, I think they're still doing seasonal time, so I think it's still like 4 per turn. So I don't know which one is more accurate to this scale of time, but I guess we'll see how we like it. I'm going to cancel that, however, because I don't need more units in this army right now. And then if we want to, we can actually go into here. You know what, let's do faction, there we go. So this will bring us to the family tree. And it's very similar to Attila, although they've moved stuff around, so rather than having the other characters on the left, it's now on the right, but you have the same family tree as before. If you click on somebody, you will see more stuff about them, although you kind of get a lot of that information here as well, so, you know, whatever. We have the other nobles along the side panel here, and then these are the candidates to become nobles, but they're not actively characters yet. All very similar to Total War Attila, just kind of laid out differently. And then, of course, when we select him, in the bottom left, we have his different intrigue options. The biggest change is going to be governors and estates. So you can actually reward people with land. Now, in Total War Attila, you could make people a governor, but it wasn't really their land. They were just kind of running it for you. And you could only make someone a governor of a province. in this game, you can actually give somebody an estate in the form of a minor settlement. So I believe this guy is, let's see. Estates, that's why. So it looks like the king, Mr. Flawn, is holding the estate of Kananas. Again, that's probably incorrect. And then with Ardok, this guy is the holder of that estate. Now, I believe there are other states I can... There should be other estates I can hand out. I'm not sure what the distinction is, but in theory, you could give every minor settlement to somebody. I'm not sure what makes this one different from the others. It might be because this is minor even for a minor settlement, but there may be a way to hand it out to him, and I just haven't tried it yet. And then in the research or the technology tab, we get sort of more of a Total War Warhammer tech tree here, where you need to meet a certain threshold before you can recruit a specific thing, rather than just something where you start at the bottom and kind of work your way through a tree. You have to, again, tick off some sort of requirement, and then you can upgrade that particular unit. So in this case, we need 10 sword or axe infantry units before we can research this. Then we move on to the next one. But once we've hit that, we can do this entire tree. So we just need like a certain amount of, whatever before we can start. But in the case of these, it's just that first requirement. This one, however, these are all independent, so they all have, separate requirements. So yeah, more of a Total War Warhammer recruit or research system again. And the same is true of the civic stuff. They just have obviously different requirements. Now, speaking of civics, if we look at the buildings here, the main building in most of these is going to be a church. Now, this is just for the Irish. I haven't, again, played the other factions, really. So, I couldn't say if this is true always, but we have, again, here, abbeys. In this case, it's a silver mine. That'll be pretty useful for making money. And then we have, like, this is a tithe barn, basically where we collect tithes. And it makes food and supplies for us. Now, we start with a little bit of additional food, so potentially we could just upgrade this right away. This gives us a larger garrison, which is going to be useful because mustering armies in this game takes quite a bit longer than it would in other games, because again, we have to not just recruit them, but wait for them to build up to full strength before they're going to really be effective. So that's something that we kind of have to, factor in as well. Let's see, what else? We have diplomacy. Trades are no longer a manual thing. They're sort of just assumed. So if you, are in contact with somebody, I don't know what the exact requirements are, but effectively if you can trade with them, you will, unless otherwise stated. So if you're like at war with somebody, you're not going to be trading with them. I'm sure there's other conditions where you would break those trade agreements, but otherwise it's just sort of assumed that, your merchants and their merchants would be doing business unless something was driving a rift between your two factions. What else do we have? Let's see. What are our other options? I think more or less it's kind of the same. The only new one I noticed was that you can declare friendship. Apparently we've already done it with all these guys, or we just don't have the option. But you can sort of like formally declare a friendship to establish that your, factions are not necessarily hostile to one another. I think last time I did it with Wessex. Let's try it again here, because they're the strongest faction starting out with. And we don't really have any designs on, Western Britain, or I guess people always get like so bent out of shape about what you call it, but for me it's like Britain and England, and then Britain and Ireland, and then within Britain you have England, which is like the southern, like the lower 2/3 of Britain, and then Scotland is like the upper third or so, and then Wales is part of England on the western part there. But people always get like so worked up about what you call it. But I'm American. It's it's the British Isles. I don't expect everyone to like be able to distinguish what part of, you know, California I'm in versus somebody else. So, yeah. Anyways, we don't intend to conquer this. So, I don't mind being friendly with them. They could be a very good ally for us. So, yeah, we can declare friendship. And it's intriguing, which means they're interested, but they're not quite there yet. So, if we throw a little bit of money their way, we'll say like 300 the minimum. That says sufficient, so that means like they are ready to accept. And I like that. It actually tells you, like, is this going to go through or not? Because in Attila, it just kind of gave you like vague suggestion about what the deal was. If it was like high, then you know you maybe went too far and you need to rein it back in. You're giving them too good a deal. If it was in the middle, then you weren't sure which way it was going to go. And then obviously, if it was low, then you had no chance. They were never going to accept that. This is much more clear, so I like this. Although, I really do not like this very, very plain UI. I think they could have done a lot more with it, especially given the artwork that they've done in the rest of the game. It just seems so bland by comparison. I wish they would have incorporated more of that artwork into the actual UI elements. There's like little flourishes and stuff, but it's very, very basic. Anyways, we'll accept this. And is there anything else we need to do? I don't think they'll accept anything beyond that. Yeah, we're not there yet. Our relations with them are literally 0, but improving. So we'll be on friendly terms with them slowly over time. We'll keep an eye on that. Okay. So that's diplomacy. There wasn't any research that we were able to take on. If we look at the economy, it's just kind of a summary of, you know, what we're currently dealing with. And let's see, objectives. These are pretty straightforward. We already saw this one. It wants me to deal with those rebels. We also have victory conditions. There are short conquests, long conquests, fame victories as well. What are kingdom victories? So fully control the provinces. Either, okay, so we have to hold that, and then rule over 5 vassals to get a short kingdom victory. Now, I generally don't prescribe to any of these and just kind of set my own objectives or play until I lose interest, but if you're looking for more, you know, directed gameplay, those are great to have. And let's see, we can hide that, and oh, this is the strategic map. So this just kind of gives us a better overlay of, you know, what's going on, where are the resources, things like that, who holds what. Because that's a little bit hard to differentiate from this map, especially since you cannot zoom out any further than I currently have it. You can zoom in closer, but this is the maximum. So be looking forward to that mod as well, because I hate playing this close to the map. Let's go ahead and maybe do some combat here. So we're looking at, what, 6 units? We have, the units are color-coded, by the way. So spear infantry is yellow, sword infantry is red, skirmishers, infantry skirmishers, not mounted skirmishers, are blue, and then mounted skirmishers are green. I don't know if that color is unique to the general or if that's just melee cav, because he is melee cav. I don't know if that's true for all melee cav or just his. Let's see. Oh no, so cavalry is just green. Okay. And then it looks like all range units are blue. And axe infantry is apparently purple. I don't know why they needed a different color than sword. I mean, they serve similar functions, but I guess they do have different armaments and slightly different effects, so sure, why not? I honestly don't care for the color coding. I don't think it was necessary. And I find that at a glance it makes the unit portraits harder to read, especially in battle, because I tend to just see the color, and maybe it's because I'm just not familiar with the system yet. I'm sure I will become very familiar. But at a glance, it just kind of means nothing to me, and it makes it actually harder for me to pick up the unit in the portrait and what they're doing. But again, still very early, so that might change. So let's go ahead and fight these guys. It looks like they have 5 units. They do have a bit of cav of their own and some spears, but that's all we know for sure. So let's get in there. And the auto-resolve doesn't like our chances, but I certainly do. We are outnumbering them by like 1 unit. Are you... It's not going to tell me. I'm pretty sure he's... Oh, yeah, he is melee cav. Okay. So, cavalry-wise, it's a wash. It looks like we have a sword infantry in place of their spear, additional spear infantry, and then we have an extra set of skirmishers, but that's about it. Alright, well, let's fight these guys. Alright, so we have rain. I think I'm going to wait for better deployment. Oh, more rain. Fog is okay. We don't have any archers, so that's not really going to hurt us. We do have skirmishers, but their range is not going to be long enough or large enough where this is going to affect it. Okay, so let's just do a real basic deployment here. We'll have the spears in the front. We'll put the swords behind them. We'll put one of you on either flank. Is there? Let's see. Guard mode. Group controls. They've kind of streamlined the game, and it feels like they've taken some of the depth out of it. So, for example, we can't put these guys in loose formation. Yeah, they're going with more of a streamlined, more like Total War Warhammer approach, and I don't know that I like that. I prefer the depth of the other historical games, and so to like lose those options, I don't know that I care for that. But you know, it is what it is. So that's fine with me. Let's go ahead and start the battle.
Cavalry charge to the rear of an enemy formation can be devastating.
And we'll push forward to there. I'm going to let them run for now, but if we start losing a bit of stamina, I may pull them back or slow them down and just let them kind of march slowly. I guess, you know, alternatively, I could just speed the camera up or the game up, so we'll do that instead. That way we're not wasting energy. Now, they've gone with a very similar approach, although they don't have their javelin men on the flanks. They've deployed them behind the spears. So my goal here is going to be, I mean, basically your goal in every Total War game, hammer and anvil. If I can get my spearmen to engage theirs and hold them long enough for the sword infantry to get up and around the flank and hit them from behind, we should be able to win. I'm also going to try to get these guys angled somewhere behind the enemy to the point where, you know, they can throw into the backs of the enemy and not necessarily over our own guys' heads. I always forget what the control is just to push the formation around. I'll have to look back into that, but there's a way to just grab your formation and move it wherever you want. So I'll need to look at the hotkeys once more. Now, that is their general there. I have my skirmisher cav on that side, so I could go harass him, potentially. You do have skirmisher mode on. That might be worth doing. But let's see how this plays out first. I'm going to get you into the trees. And let's get you up there. And you guys can continue to push up to, say, there. And we'll see how they react. But I'm hoping I can get their spears to just hit us straight on like that. You guys are going to kind of swing around and flank them. And we'll probably push these guys up and around and just have them kind of throwing into the back of the enemy. Let's harass them a little bit. Okay, so here we go. You need to make sure that you engage them. Let's get you something to that effect. Let's take the skirmisher mode off there. And I need you guys here. Come on, move, move, move. Alright, you need to push up. You can be a little bit more direct in your approach there. Alright, so their skirmisher cav has gone after mine. Ignore him and just get in there, but you can engage him. Go, go, go. And let's deal with their javelin men. We should be slaughtering him. Yeah, he's basically dead. Ah, crap, they caught us up there. Let's see, hit them from behind. Okay, we got him. We got him. I need you to run them down before they kill you. Before you leave the area. Give us one of those. Stay on them, stay on them. And what's happening over here? I mean, that's pretty much a wash. I don't think either one of these is going to defeat the other. They're the exact same unit, so neither has an advantage. There's our victory. Cool. They're going to get away more than likely, but we'll try to catch them. I don't think we're going to have much luck, but we'll try. Because if we can defeat them outright and make sure none of their units prevail into future battles, that would be pretty useful. Do they have any other units anywhere? No. Well, I'll let this finish and then I'll see you guys in a second. Or you know what? I don't think we're gonna catch them. Let's just end it here. Okay, so we only lost about 30 men there actually, and most of it was from our spearmen that were kind of, you know, being the anvil for our hammer to, you know, wail on. We also did lose quite a few of our household riders. Luckily, the king survived, because that would really suck to lose him on the first turn of the campaign. Now we have three options. We can ransom and release captives to gain a little bit of money. We can take those warriors on to replenish our troops a little bit, or we can just kill them. This has the same effect that it does in Attila, and I believe every other game where this is an option, wherein your enemies will like you less for doing this, but the enemies of your enemies, or you know, your allies, will like you more for doing this. Because these guys are supposed to be part of our faction and rebels, I think I'll take on the warriors and show them the error of their ways. Now they're going to escape into enemy territory. Oh, we killed that leader, right? Not enemy territory, just neutral territory. Although, if we turn this into a full playthrough, I believe this will be one of our first targets, is to conquer this. Because those guys are Norse, and we can't let them gain too much traction here. We need to kind of push them off the island as soon as we can. The same is true for Difflin here as well. Excuse me. And this being, you know, Dublin, we probably want to go after that and make that maybe our proper capital. Let's see. Oh, we need to level him up. Yeah, let's do that. So, the sort of RPG mechanics for the characters is a little bit less... I'm not sure what the word is for the way it is in Attila, but essentially you start at one point and it kind of branches. I guess it's less branching. Let's go with that. It's more linear, but you have different sort of... what's the word? Like different roles for the character, and you sort of level up the skills associated with those roles. So if we wanted our general to be, or excuse me, our king to be a champion, we could give him, you know, more skills in, or more points in the champion skill, which is going to increase his command, his melee skill, things like that. Make him, you know, a warrior and a commander. Or we can make him a quartermaster, and then we gain additional campaign movement and probably other things down the line. Yeah, additional supplies, lower upkeep. And actually, that's probably what I'd go with first, because I think a lot of people underestimate how useful additional campaign movement can be. We can also make them like siege engineers, priests, things like that. I'm going to go quartermaster here, though. And let's see. So his influence is currently 8 out of a potential 10. They've kind of streamlined the influence system. I'm actually pretty glad about that. Although I don't know what the hell this symbol is supposed to be. I'm sure if I saw a larger version of it, it would be more clear, but I don't know what the hell that's supposed to represent. But I do like that it's, you know, much more concrete than the old one, where you just had like a number, and that number was, you know, basically infinite as long as you saved it up. So your influence can only get so high in this. At least that's the impression I'm under. And then rather than intelligence, we have governance. And I believe it used to be, what, might or something? I don't remember what the other ones were. Zeal is still the same, although what it does is a little bit different. But it's still zeal. Intelligence is now governance, and might, or whatever it was before, is now command. But I think effectively they're covering sort of the same things.
Bring me their heads.
So we could cross into these, or this territory here and finish these guys. That may be ill-advised, though, because we could be, you know, pissing off this faction, I'm actually going to risk it here. Because in all of my Total War experience, every time I leave a rebel army and ignore it, it always comes back to bite me. So I'm not going to make that mistake here, even if it leads to future problems. We'll just auto-resolve this. And down you go. Alright, so again, I'll take the replenishment. Yeah, because that money is not significant. So there's our mission complete. Probably better I did it for that reason as well, because now we're going to get internal stability, which gives us plus 50 unit replenishment for all of our armies for the next 5 turns, which means if I recruit any new units for the next 5 turns, I will be able to build those up faster. Now, unfortunately, there is no force march in the game anymore, so I can't move them a little bit further to get them to this settlement like I would be able to in, say, Attila. But on the next turn, we'll be able to march them over there and take advantage of that. Money is also a little bit different in the game as well, in that it just seems to be deflated, if that makes any sense. So each individual gold in this game seems to count for a little bit more. I don't think you'll be seeing, like in my Total War Attila Western Roman Empire campaign that we're doing now, my income is like 28,900 something per turn, and every turn we have like 30,000 gold to spend. I don't think you're ever going to be seeing sums like that in this game, although I could be wrong. It seems like you're going to be dealing with much more limited resources, which makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, what else can we do before we end this turn? What else can we do? Did we upgrade any buildings? We did, yeah. We do have a bit of money left, although I'm kind of reluctant to start throwing money at stuff. That wouldn't be a terrible idea. That would give us a little bit extra public order, which it's already fairly decent here. But it would also give us a little bit more church income, which should help us, overall with making more money. Our war fervor is doing fine. We're not at war with anybody actively, although we will be fairly soon if I can help it. Maybe this would be better. That would hurt our public order a little bit. However, it would boost other things, including our income, quite considerably. And we do have, I think, enough of a public order buffer where it won't be an immediate issue. Just something that we have to eventually plan for. That wouldn't be a terrible idea either. But I have enough food right now. We have a surplus of 60. And then, what is this? Oh, our legitimacy, right. And then for this province, we have 14 public orders. So I think we'll be fine doing that. And that'll be like a long-term investment. Alright guys, well I've just been kind of, double checking everything, and I'm pretty sure that's everything that we want to do in this first turn. Now, I don't know how long I've been recording for, but I think I'm going to end the episode here. And we'll call this sort of part 1. Again, if you guys would like to see more, I'd be happy to do it. I'm going to be playing the game anyways, so if you'd like me to do it on camera, just let me know. But if not, then I'll just probably keep playing from this point on by myself. But yeah, I'm enjoying the game so far. I do have gripes with it. If I had to put a number on it, I would probably say maybe 7. Like, I think that's fair. It's nothing special. It's not blowing me away. Some of the changes I agree with. Some of them I'm not so sure about. I do think that it is a Total War game worth playing. It's a bit expensive to me. I think they're charging about $39.99 on Steam for it. Again, that might vary depending on your area. But the game is essentially an expansion for Total War Attila. It's running on the same engine, and I don't think that they've done. I mean, obviously they've made a new map. They've made new character models and all that. So it just seems a little high, but that said, I haven't gotten real deep into the campaign, and maybe there is enough depth there to justify it. Let's see. Is there anything else? If there's any mechanics that I miss or you guys would like to know more about in maybe an additional video, let me know about that as well. I think I've covered most of everything, at least that I could in like a part 1. Obviously, there's things further down the line that would require more looking into, but I couldn't necessarily do without, playing well ahead and then showing you a later campaign. But I have only had the game for not even 24 hours, so that's not quite possible just yet. But maybe in a full campaign we'll be able to do that. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time playing some Thrones of Britannia with you, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for maybe part 2.